Okay guys, it has been a minute since I did a book haul video, so it's time to do one today. And this is where you see how out of hand I've been getting recently. Honestly, there could be a lot more books in this, but there was a time when I just didn't really feel like doing a haul, so I just put books away on my shelves. That was a few months ago, so I'm pretty confident in saying that these are all of the books that I've acquired in like approximately the last 2 months. So there are like 15, maybe 20, probably closer to 20. But we're gonna go through them, and you can congratulate me or shame me, but we're gonna go through them. I'll tell you what I got. So these are really in no particular order. They're just the way that I have them stacked. So the first one is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. And so I read A Court of Thorns and Roses in October and I liked it. And I have heard that the second book is even better than the first one. And I made the kind of like determination that I was gonna give this series at least 2 books for sure, and then kind of like make a decision on whether I want to continue or not. Currently, I feel like I probably will, just because it's an enjoyable read. Like the first one was an enjoyable read, but I'm not sure exactly when I'll be reading this, maybe in like December. But yeah, I have the second one and I'll be ready for it, like whenever I decide it's time to get there. Next up, we have Whites on Race and Other Falsehoods by Otega Uwagba, and this is a personal essay that was written by this author. I believe she is a, oh no, she is actually an author. For some reason I thought that she was also like a journalist, but I think maybe she is also a journalist. But regardless of that, this is a personal essay that was written in the aftermath of everything with George Floyd. So I think that this would be very probably very raw and very emotional and very relevant to that tragedy. So this is a book that I actually got from my cousin, and I am looking forward to reading this. Then next up we have The River of Silver by S.A. Chakraborty, and this is basically tales from the Daevabad world and like extra like short stories from perspectives that we may not have gotten in the Daevabad trilogy, or maybe even characters that we did know from the Daevabad trilogy. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm really like looking forward to reading this because I loved that series. And the only bone I have to pick with this is that the paperback is small, like it's smaller than the Daevabad trilogy paperbacks, but if you bought the hardcover of River of Silver, it's taller than the paperbacks. So I don't know why they did that. I really hate it when publishing companies do that, but regardless, I do have the book even though it's small, and I'm looking forward to these stories. Next up, we have God Killer by Hannah Kaner, and so this is about a world where gods are now illegal, and so there are people called God Killers who basically go around being paid to like kill gods, and a lot of the times it is like fledgling gods before they get powerful, or even being paid to kill like a more powerful god that has survived thus far. But basically they are sort of like contract killers, except they are going to kill gods. And so our main character does this for a living, but I believe the main plot of this book is that she meets a god and a little girl whose lives are tied to one another, and so she wouldn't be able to kill the god without killing the little girl as well, and the plot goes from there. And it sounds very interesting, and not only that, but it has an absolutely beautiful cover, and I'm looking forward to this one as well. Next up, we have Moon of the Turning Leaves by Wabgeshig Rice, and this is the next book in the series with Moon of the Crusted Snow as the first one, which I read in July, and I loved that book. It was an incredible, just like quiet, unsettling horror novel that was very like interpersonal in nature, and it's about this Anishinaabe community that is cut off from the grid, like no power, no phone service, that type of thing, and has to deal with that in the coming winter. And so this is another book in that series, but what I just realized from reading the synopsis is that this actually takes place years later, so it is a sequel, but not a direct sequel picking up straight from the events of the first book, but it is like a number of years later, and it is the same community and what has happened to them since then, and what what kind of struggles they're facing now. And so I'm really looking forward to this because the writing was awesome in what he was trying to do in that first book, and this one seems a little bit different. It doesn't seem as much like horror. It seems more like the challenges facing a community, but I am invested in this community after the first book, and I think this will be really great. Then next up we have A River Enchanted and A Fire Endless by Rebecca Ross. And so I have both of these books just because it's just a duology, and I'm really looking forward to A River Enchanted, and I basically have just heard like such good things about this duology that I really wanted to have both books available to me, because I'm not necessarily a series binger all the time, mostly because I like to plan ahead, but I feel like with it only being 2 books, there's the very real possibility that when I finish A River Enchanted, I will really just want to continue on to A Fire Endless right away and like get the series finished, if I'm just in that mood and if I'm really loving it. So that is why I have both of those, and I'm very much looking forward to this series based on the praise that people give it. Next up, we have a book that I got secondhand, and that is The Mystery of the Blue Train by Agatha Christie. And to be quite honest, I don't know anything about this except that it is an Agatha Christie Hercule Poirot mystery, and I love Poirot, so that's that. Next up, we have another secondhand find, which is We Spread by Ian Reid. And I initially heard about this book from Kayla at Books and Lala, and it was one that I was interested in, kind of like on the edges of my radar, just because like it wasn't a book that I felt like was a priority for me, but I was definitely motivated to pick it up when I saw it secondhand because it was only like $6, and it sounded very emotional and very very sad, honestly. So we follow our main character. I'm pretty sure her name is Penny. Yeah, so we follow Penny, who is an artist, and she is starting to grow old. Her longtime partner has passed away, and she is doing okay, but then she kind of starts to deteriorate. Like, it's uncertain whether she's starting to feel the effects of dementia, but she is starting to feel like growing old, and there's been arrangements made for her to live in a long-term care facility, and so she is living in this facility, and it seems like there could be something sinister going on here. Like, it's not clear whether these people are just feeling the effects of aging or whether there's something else going on, but I think that above all, this focuses on the themes of growing old and coming to terms with that, and especially maybe I think it's going to be emotionally resonant for me as someone with relatives that have gone through that, like experiencing dementia and watching what happens. And this just seems very like creative and very sad. Like, it seems like a bit of a creative take on literary fiction. Like, it might not be pure general fiction, it might have more going on, but it's still gonna have that emotional focus. Next up, we have Divine Rivals, also by Rebecca Ross. So at this point, I have bought 3 of this author's books without reading any yet. So I hope that I like them, but I've just heard such good things about all of these, and based on the nature of them, where they're sort of like fantasy with maybe a splash of romance, or this one being primarily romance, I really can't see myself not liking them. So Divine Rivals has this premise where there is a new war in this world among the gods. Like, it says that the gods have been sleeping for centuries, but now they are awake again and they are warring with each other. And so this affects everyone living in the world, and our main character, Iris, just want to make sure I'm right about that. Yeah, so we have our main characters, Iris and Roman, who work at a paper, and they are kind of like rivals with each other, but they end up striking up this anonymous correspondence through letters where they don't necessarily know that they're writing to each other, but they sort of form a bond and a love story through this. And I just love that concept. Like, it just sounds so cute and joyful to me, and I think that the world building could be really interesting in here to kind of like supplement that romance. Like, I feel like it could have a very good balance, and so I'm really excited for this. Next up, we have Rouge by Mona Awad, and I'm not gonna lie, having read Bunny, I'm a little bit nervous for this one now, but I am very intrigued and interested nonetheless. So Rouge is about this woman whose mother dies, but her mother was extremely like hyper focused on beauty and beauty standards, and she was a member of this spa that appears to be almost like a cult. And so when the daughter travels to like make arrangements after her mother's death, she ends up encountering this spa and this like, you know, culty group, and gets involved with it, and like whatever happens happens. But I think that this is probably gonna have that same like fever dream quality that Bunny did, so I'm hoping that this one is like slightly more grounded and that I can like ground myself in something. But the whole concept of like the commentary on the beauty industry and everything, it sounds really interesting to me, so I still really want to see what this book has to say. And to be fair, I did find Bunny fascinating, so hopefully I will feel the same way about Rouge. Okay, next up we have Silver Nitrate by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, and this is a book that takes place in, I think, the 1970s. Oh no, it's the 90s, sorry. So basically our main character is a sound editor, but she's kind of left out of like the boys club of filmmaking in the 90s in Mexico City. But her friend, her best friend, Tristan, is a soap opera star, and he discovers that his new neighbor is actually a horror movie director who is sort of like responsible for some cult classics, so maybe not widely acclaimed fame, but definitely like some popularity there. And what specifically happens here? It's been a while since I read this synopsis. So yes, this legendary director claims that he has a magic film that never finished, and that is why his career vanished, because he's cursed. So he wants our two main characters to help him shoot the remaining scenes of this movie and to help lift the supposed curse on him. And this just sounds really cool. Like, I just think it would be fascinating to read something like this where there's like dark and occult magic in this like movie making setting. And I'm really hoping that this is truly supernatural, because that's what I really like want it to be. So fingers crossed, like probably best if nobody spoils that for me, but at the same time I'm just really hoping that it like actually has supernatural elements, because I think that would be super cool, and I'm really looking forward to discovering that. Okay, next up we have two books that I've actually already read, and so I talked about these in my October wrap-up, so I'll just very briefly go through them. So the first one is When the Reckoning Comes by LaTanya McQueen, and this is the story of our main character Myra, who has gotten out of the small town that she grew up in, and she is like an inner city teacher, and Myra is Black, and she has a friend from her childhood who is a white woman, because they're both grown up now, and her friend invites her back to their small town for her wedding, but she's actually having her wedding on this restored like plantation and in this house and everything, where there was always rumors that it was haunted. So she goes back for the wedding, but there's definitely suggestion that like something terrible could happen with this wedding. This wasn't my favorite, but I don't regret reading it. Like, I thought the concept was really solid. It just didn't end up going where I wanted it to go. Then we also have Midnight is the Darkest Hour, which I have talked about in a couple of videos now, my spooky book recs and my October wrap-up. And so this is the latest release from Ashley Winstead, and this follows our two main characters, Ruth, who is the preacher's daughter, and Everett, who is her best friend, who kind of is like an outcast in this super religious Louisiana town. And they discover that there have been some murders going on in this town, and they basically are uniquely positioned with like information and who they are to maybe solve these murders. And there could be something kind of like a cult going on as well. It's uncertain, and there's a mystery to be unraveled, and there's also some strong romantic themes in here. I gave this a 4.25 stars. I really enjoyed it. Okay, next up we have a book that I am so incredibly happy to have, because it was one of the kindest gifts that someone has sent to me, and that is Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Chalice of the Gods. This is the newest release in the Percy Jackson world, and it involves Percy Jackson trying to go to college. if Percy wants to get into New Rome University, he has to complete a bunch of tasks that are going to be set for him, and I'm assuming that that is going to be the like subject of this book, or maybe even this series, depending on how long like this particular subsection of it goes. And to be honest, I have to read the rest of the original series before I can move on to this, but I'm just so happy to have it because my friend Mallory sent this to me all the way from Mississippi, from Square Books in Oxford, and this is a signed copy of the book, and she was just like so kind to send it to me, and I just appreciate it so much because I'm just so I'm so looking forward to reading a book like this, even if I have to kind of get the rest of that original series out of the way first. But Percy Jackson is just such a joyful series, like I can't wait to read this. Next up, we have a little bit of an indulgent purchase on my part, but it is just so beautiful, and that is an illustrated edition of The Hobbit, illustrated by Jemima Catlin and obviously by J.R.R. Tolkien. And this is just like, I saw this at Indigo on my trip there and I had to get it because it really is just so beautiful. Like, I love the style of the artwork in here, and like there are a bunch of full page illustrations, but there are also like lots on almost every page. There's always like an illustration somewhere or another. So for example, even if it's just something like that, but they do have them on almost every single page. And I really want to reread The Hobbit, and I also am just like, I mean, looking ahead, to be fair, probably quite far into the future, but just for the potential of, you know, reading this with a little kitty, I would love to have a nice illustrated edition. And I just couldn't resist this one because it was so beautiful. It's so cute. Next up, we have The Goodbye Cat by Hiro Arikawa, and this is a collection of 7 short stories from this Japanese author. It's translated into English, and it is basically just 7 stories about cats and families, or like cats and people, and it just, like, I can tell it's going to be adorable, and this is just the type of book where, like, if I'm ever having a bad day or something, I would just want to read a cute story about, like, a cat and how it's forming a relationship with someone, or, like, making someone feel better or something, so it just sounds wonderful. Then next up, we have It Happened One Christmas by Chantal Gurtin, and this is basically going to be my festive read, or one of. I might get more Christmas books, but I'll be like reading this in December, I'm sure. And this is basically the story of a character named Zoe, and she is a holiday movie director. She loves festive movies, and she is going to get the chance to make a movie that is her own script. But the town where it is supposed to be set has this mayor named Ben that just won't, like, he refuses to give her permission to make a movie in his town. And so she has to change his mind. They get stranded together. Very classic festive holiday story here. Very cute, I'm sure. And so that's basically just all I'm hoping that it is like a popcorn, basically the book version of a Hallmark movie, and I will read this close to Christmas. Okay, next up we have Wildfire by Hannah Grace, and while I don't believe this is a sequel to Icebreaker, it does take place in the same universe, like surrounding students, I think, that go to the same university. So in this one we have Russ and Aurora as our main characters, and they have a one-night stand, but Aurora basically leaves before Russ even has a chance to ask for her full name, but they run into each other because they are camp counselors at the same summer camp, which has very strict rules about fraternizing, so to speak. But I'm assuming they're just going to do it anyway, and that is going to be part of the rom-com. And yeah, I think this will be really cute, and hopefully it's just as good as Icebreaker, and I love that for me, so I'm really looking forward to this. Then next up we have Dead 11 by Jimmy Giuliano, and the premise of this sounds super interesting to me, but also in addition to that, look at this cover. I think that this is an incredibly good and just like intriguing cover that just draws me in and makes me want to pick this up. I love the look of this. But basically, from what I understand, this book is about an island where a mother comes seeking her missing son, and she thinks that he may have had a connection with this island, but this island is obsessed with the year 1994, and they are basically like reliving almost like a time loop, like a particular day or a particular set of days from 1994. And there's obviously something sinister going on here, and like the newcomer, like the character, has to figure out what that is while simultaneously like trying to find her son. And it sounds very creepy, but it also sounds very fascinating to try and figure out like what the heck is going on this island. And so I think and I hope that this will be right up my alley and really, really intriguing to me. We're almost done, I promise. So this is another secondhand pickup, which is The Death of Mrs. Westaway by Ruth Ware. And the premise of this book is that we have a main character named Harriet Westaway, and she gets a letter basically giving her an inheritance from this Mrs. Westaway that has passed away. But Harriet isn't actually related to this Mrs. Westaway, but she goes to like the estate anyway to kind of see what's up, and she finds out that like there's something going on, there's something like very, very wrong with the people in this family and like with this family, and she ends up figuring out that like whatever it is, it centers around this inheritance, and she is somehow involved. And I'm just really interested in this because I've heard that this is one of Ruth Ware's better books, and I'm just like, I liked The Woman in Cabin 10, to be fair. I read it a long time ago, like when I was a teenager, and so I just feel like this could be another like kind of popcorn thriller type book, and I'm into that. Then we have a horror book called Nestlings by Nat Cassidy, and this is actually a recent release, but I heard such good things about it, and the part that really sold me on this was the fact that it's horror, but it's very personal and very emotional and character focused, and that is what I tend to like in a book. So basically the premise of this is that the main characters, Anna and Reed, are like, they're struggling in a lot of different ways. They have had a child, but this childbirth was a terrible experience for Anna. It left her paralyzed. It's unclear whether that is permanent or not, and she is struggling with their relationship, and they're struggling with the baby and with a place to live. And then they win this housing lottery in New York, which provides them an apartment to live in. And I think that like disturbing things start to happen in this like housing that they've won, like in this apartment, and it is maybe like unease and maybe paranoia, but there could actually be something sinister going on. But that is in combination with all of the struggles that Anna and Reed and their child are already going through. And so I'm just like, I'm super fascinated by this and the great reviews that it's gotten so far, and I hope that I really like it. And then finally, we have the book that I went to the bookstore for today, and that is Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. And this is a little bit more of an informed purchase because I recently read The Hacienda and I absolutely loved it. And so that really, really made me want to pick up Vampires of El Norte. I wanted to kind of before as well, because like this is a gorgeous cover and it sounds interesting, but after reading The Hacienda and loving it is what really made me kind of confident in Isabel Cañas. And I think that this has been getting a couple of mixed reviews, but positive reviews on the whole. So I'm really just hoping that I love this as much as The Hacienda, because if it has those same kind of elements, like the spookiness and horror, but also mixed with the interpersonal character elements and the romance, I just think that this can work for me just as well, and I'm really, really excited to find out if that's the case. Okay, wow. That was a lot of books to talk about, so maybe I should start doing book hauls more often again, because that was, yeah, this is probably pretty long. I do apologize for that. But if you did stick around for the whole thing, thank you for that. Let me know down in the comments what you think about all of these books that I got, because this is really exciting. We have like a wide range of stuff here. Fantasy, horror, romance, like you name it. And yeah, I'm really excited to have these on my shelves and to read them in the somewhat near future. So that is it for this video. Please like if you liked it, subscribe if you'd like to see more content from me. As always, I will have my Discord with Ben and socials linked in the description if you're interested in any of that stuff, and I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!